He had not slept properly in months, yet every morning before the sun even touched the windows he would quietly slip out of bed, make breakfast and pack a small lunch with careful hands, as if every sandwich, every fruit slice was a promise he refused to break. His name was Armin, and to the world he was just another struggling single dad, but to one little girl he was everything. And still every evening she waited by the door, small fingers wrapped around the edge of the wooden frame, her eyes fixed on the road, as if she could pull him home faster just by believing hard enough. Because once upon a time he had been late, and that one evening had changed everything. Life had not always been like this. There was a time when laughter filled their small apartment, when music played in the kitchen and her mother danced while cooking, as Armin pretended to complain but secretly watched with a smile he never realized would one day disappear. But illness is cruel, and it does not ask for permission. It came quietly at first, then all at once, and within a year everything changed. Hospitals replaced parks, silence replaced laughter, and Armin learned how to be strong even when every part of him wanted to fall apart. When she was gone the world felt hollow, but his daughter Era was still there, too young to understand, too innocent to know why her mother would never come back. She only knew that her father held her tighter than before, and that sometimes at night she would wake up and find him sitting beside her bed, just watching, as if afraid she might disappear too. That was the day Armin made a silent promise he would be both mother and father no matter how hard it got, and it got hard. Bills piled up faster than he could pay them. He worked 2 jobs, one during the day and one late into the night. He learned how to braid hair after watching videos for hours. He burned meals before finally getting them right. He sat through school meetings trying to understand things he had never paid attention to before. Every day was a test, and every night was a battle against exhaustion. But Erin never complained. She waited every evening at exactly the same time. She stood by the door waiting for him to come home from work, even when he told her not to, even when he was late, even when the lights flickered and the night grew quiet. She waited because waiting was her way of loving him. One rainy evening the city slowed down under heavy traffic, and Armin was stuck miles away from home, his phone battery dying, his body aching after a long shift. He knew he would be late again, and his heart tightened because he could already imagine her standing there by the door, her small face filled with hope. When he finally reached home it was past midnight. The building was silent, the hallway lights dim. His steps felt heavier than usual as he approached the door, and then he saw her curled up on the floor right beside the door, fast asleep, still waiting, her tiny hand resting against the wood as if she had refused to move even for a second. Something inside him broke. He knelt down, gently lifting her into his arms, and for the first time since his wife had passed away he cried without holding back, not because he was weak but because he realized how deeply she trusted him, how much she believed that no matter what he would come back. The next morning he made a decision. Something had to change. He could not let her wait like that again. He began searching for better work, something stable, something that would allow him to be present. It was not easy. Rejections came one after another. People saw his tired eyes, his worn-out clothes, and they judged without knowing his story. But he kept trying because giving up was not an option. Weeks turned into months, and just when hope began to feel distant he got a chance, a small office job, nothing glamorous but steady, regular hours enough to be home before sunset. The first evening he arrived early. He stood outside the door for a moment, just listening. He could hear her inside humming softly, probably playing with her toys. He opened the door quietly, and there she was, standing exactly where she always stood, waiting. But this time when she saw him the surprise on her face turned into the brightest smile he had ever seen. "You are early," she said, her voice filled with pure joy. He knelt down, opening his arms, and she ran into them, laughing. From that day things slowly began to change. They started eating dinner together, they talked more, they laughed again, not the same as before but something new, something healing. Every evening Era still stood by the door, not because she was afraid he would not come but because it had become their little ritual, a symbol of everything they had been through. Years past, life never became perfect but it became better. Armin was still tired some days, still worried about the future, but he was there, always there, and Era grew stronger, kinder and more understanding than most children her age. One day as she stood by the door waiting, like always, Armin noticed something different. She was taller now, almost reaching the handle. Her eyes still carried that same hope, but there was also something else, pride. She was proud of him. He walked up to her, placing his hand gently on her head. "You do not have to wait anymore," he said softly. "I will always come back." She looked at him for a moment, then shook her head with a small smile. "I know," she replied, "but I still want to, because waiting for you is my favorite part of the day." And in that moment Armin realized something he had not understood before. All those years he thought he was the one holding everything together, but in truth it was her patience, her belief, her quiet love that had saved him. The world may have seen a struggling single dad, but she saw a hero, and sometimes that is all a person needs to keep going. Years moved forward quietly like pages turning in a book no one noticed was being written. The small apartment changed little, the same worn couch, the same kitchen with its chipped corners, the same door where everything important seemed to begin and end. But Era was no longer the tiny girl who had to stand on her toes to reach the handle. She had grown taller, her voice softer yet stronger, her eyes still carrying that same unwavering warmth that once waited through long lonely nights. And still she waited, not because she needed to anymore but because she chose to. Armin began to notice how life had shifted in ways he never expected. There were fewer struggles with money now, his job had improved, his hours were stable, and for the first time in years he allowed himself to breathe without guilt. But with that came a different kind of fear, the kind that creeps in when things finally begin to feel okay, the fear of losing it all again. He never spoke about it, he never showed it, but sometimes late at night, when Era was asleep, he would sit alone in the quiet, staring at nothing, remembering everything he had fought through and wondering if he had done enough, if he was enough. Era noticed more than he realized. Children who grow up in silence learn how to hear things that are never said. One evening, as she stood by the door waiting, she did not rush into his arms like she used to. Instead, she watched him carefully. His shoulders looked heavier than usual, his smile a little forced. He stepped inside and tried to hide it, but she saw through him just like he once saw through her tears. "Are you tired?" she asked gently. He paused, then smiled, brushing it off. "Just a long day." But she did not move, did not run, did not laugh. She simply walked up to him and took his hand the same way he used to hold hers when she was afraid. "You can rest now," she said softly. "I am here for a moment." He could not speak because those words, they were the ones he had been carrying for years, the ones he had repeated silently every time life tried to break him, and now they came back to him from her. That night something shifted again, not in a dramatic way, not with loud changes or sudden realizations, but in the quiet understanding that they were no longer just surviving, they were healing together. Time passed, and with it came new challenges. Era reached an age where the world outside their small home began to call her louder. School, friends, dreams, choices. She talked about things Armin did not always understand, but he listened. He always listened because he knew what it felt like to not be heard. One day she came home quieter than usual, no humming, no soft footsteps, no waiting at the door. She went straight to her room and closed it. Armin felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the same one from years ago when silence meant something was wrong. He knocked gently, no answer. He waited, then slowly opened the door. She was sitting by the window, her knees pulled close, her face turned away. "What happened?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then spoke. "They asked about Mom today." Simple words, but heavy. He walked in, sitting beside her, unsure of where to begin. Years had passed, but some wounds do not follow time, they just wait. Like she used toy, did not know what to say. She continued, "Everyone has stories, pictures, memories, and I." She stopped. He placed his hand over hers. "You have memories," he said quietly, "different ones, but they are still yours." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "Will I forget her?" The question hit him harder than anything because it was the same fear he carried every day. "No," he said firmly, "because she is not just in the past, she is in you, in your kindness, in your strength, in the way you wait." Era smiled faintly through her tears, and in that moment he realized something else. He had not just raised her, she had grown into someone who carried pieces of both of them, someone who turned pain into patience, loss into love. Years turned again faster now. Life does that when things begin to feel stable, and then one day the moment he had always known would come. Arrived. Era stood by the door, but this time with a small bag in her hand, not waiting, leaving. Armin tried to keep his voice steady. "You packed everything?" She nodded. "It is just another city, not another world," she said, trying to smile, but her eyes betrayed her. They both knew this was different. This was not about distance, it was about growing up, about stepping into a life beyond the door they had built everything around. He wanted to say so many things, to tell her to stay, to ask for more time, to hold on just a little longer, but love is not about holding it is about letting go when the time comes. So he simply nodded. "You will be okay." She looked at him, then something familiar returned. She walked to the door and stopped, turning back to him. "Wait here," she said softly. He frowned, slightly confused, but he stayed. She stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her. For a moment everything felt still, then a soft knock. He opened the door and there she was, standing exactly like she used to, small smile, eyes full of that same unwavering belief. "I just wanted to do it one last time," she whispered. "Wait for you." His vision blurred as he pulled her into his arms, holding her tighter than ever before, because some moments are too precious to let pass quietly. When she finally left, the apartment felt different, not empty but quieter, like a chapter had ended, yet something remained, something strong, something unbreakable. Days later, Armin returned home from work as usual. The hallway, the door, the silence, all the same, but as he reached for the handle he paused, because for a brief second he imagined her there waiting, and instead of sadness a small smile appeared on his face because he understood now waiting was never about fear, it was about love, the kind that stays even when people move forward, even when life changes, even when doors close and new ones open. Somewhere in another city, Era stood by a different door, living a new life, chasing new dreams, but sometimes in the evening without even realizing it she would pause, look toward the door and smile because a part of her was still there, still waiting, and always would be, not for him to come back but for the feeling he gave her, the feeling that no matter where life takes you there will always be someone who came back for you every single time.